The son of Afrobeat legend Fela Kuti spoke of his father's bravery in using music as a weapon ahead of an immersive exhibition opening at the Paris Philharmonic on Thursday. Fela Kuti praised his father as someone who was adamant and focused towards his music and his community.
He was the voice of the voiceless, because at that time there was no voice that was speaking about the corruption or the ills that were happening in society at that time. Nobody was brave enough to come out and stand and combat any military dictator at that time. Fela was the only one. So he saw his music as a force, a weapon to pass this very important message against authority, against colonization, against corrupt African governments. So it was a weapon for him.
The Paris Philharmonic is paying homage to Fela Kuti by recreating the atmosphere of his sweaty, political charged nightclub in Nigeria, the shrine that became a beacon for global stars in the 1970s, including Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney.
Fela was never mainstream, but that's the irony. But most of the mainstream, the Beatles were listening to Fela, Paul McCartney, John Lennon, everybody was listening to Fela, but Fela's music just never got the airplay that they had. And when you read the autobiography of Miles Davis, he says it blatantly. He said Fela's Afrobeat will be a force to be reckoned with in the future. So any top musician understood the force of Fela's music at that time.
Fela's politics have also remained potent. Kuti was harassed throughout much of his life by the military authorities in Nigeria for his relentless criticism of the corruption and violent misrule. Fela came out of Africa with this incredible sound that caught the ears of everybody. To use this music as a political weapon and message that caught the attention of the world, and especially France, maybe because of the connection to his own rebellions.
Officials in Malawi have exhumed the bodies of 25 suspected Ethiopian migrants from a mass grave 250 kilometers north of the capital city, Lilongwe. Villagers found the bodies in a forest located near the main road that connects Malawi and Tanzania, which is known as a route traffickers use to transport people to South Africa. The early evidence suggested the men buried in Mtagatanga forest may have suffocated while traveling in a van, police said. Investigators are looking into the death as a potential human trafficking case. Evidence collected at the scene indicated the men were Ethiopian nationals between the ages of 25 and 40. In July, police impounded a 30-ton tanker truck carrying 42 Ethiopians into Malawi along the route from the border with Tanzania. Authorities said at the time that some of the passengers looked frail and in urgent need of medication and nourishing food.
Team anthems and jerseys. No doubt, Moroccan fans in Qatar are getting in the World Cup mood. Supporters gathered Thursday next to the countdown clock on Corniche Road in Doha, with less than a month to go until the 22nd FIFA tournament kicks off.
We are really excited to welcome in our Moroccan club. We hope that we can show them in demi-final or final, why not? So this thing is really a fact for us, and we are all of us, we are ready to that, and we are ready to support our country with our best.
In total, about 1.2 million visitors are expected in Qatar for the World Cup. The Atlas Lions will face a battle against Canada, Belgium and Croatia in Group F. A new coach was appointed early September to lead the squad. Fans look forward to the team's sixth appearance in the competition. I am very happy because our team is participating in the World Cup. The Moroccan audience is very excited and we are gathered here. I'm honored to be here. On November 20, the World Cup will get started at the 60,000-seat Al Bayt Stadium. All 64 games over the course of 29 days, involving 32 teams, will be held in the Doha area. Morocco's first game will take place on November 23.
The
Paris Philharmonic is devoting an immersive exhibition to the Nigerian musician Fela Kuti, inventor of Afrobeat in the 1970s, who had a real love affair with France, according to Alexandre Girard-Muscagorry, one of the exhibition curators. We were a bit frustrated by the fact that we were often confronted with a rather simplistic or monolithic vision of Fela, the inventor of Afrobeat, the fighting musician, but we really wanted to get into the sound and political material that Fela invented in the 1970s and 80s. We also wanted to design the first exhibition that would allow us to unfold the entire musical and political trajectory using archives and unpublished photographs that would allow us to get as close as possible to Fela's music and his political struggles. The atmosphere of Fela's sweaty, politically charged nightclub in Nigeria, The Shrine, became a beacon for global stars in the 1970s, including Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney. So Fela's music is everywhere in the world. There are obviously many Afrobeat groups that continue to revive his music in Nigeria, but also in Europe, Brazil and Japan. This is what we show in the exhibition, the global nature of the Afrobeat sound today. But the rhythms that Fela invented are also used by rappers and pop musicians. This sound is really very strong.
Musiciens de pop musique, donc ce son est vraiment très fort.
Kuti was harassed throughout much of his life by the military authorities in Nigeria for his relentless criticism of their corruption and violent misrule.
Fela was a storyteller, like typical African. You know, he told stories about what was happening in society. He told stories also of like the future he was seeing for our society.
Fela Kuti died from AIDS complications in 1997, but his pioneering work remains as potent as ever.
Hundreds of young protesters clashed on Thursday with security forces in the Guinean capital of Conakry after a banned group called for demonstrations against the country's ruling junta. The National Front for the Defense of the Constitution, FNDC, which had called the protest, said 5 people had suffered gunshot wounds, one of whom was in a critical condition. Guinea has been under military government since a September 2021 coup that ousted President Alpha Conde after more than 10 years in power. An alliance of political parties, trade unions, civil groups and FNDC spearheaded protests against Conde before his ouster. The coalition had called for peaceful demonstrations to take place in Conakry on Thursday, followed by nationwide protests on October 26. It is pushing for rapid return to civilian rule and the release of prisoners that it says have been detained for political reasons. Military leader Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya has appointed himself president and undertaken to restore civilian rule within 3 years.